All right, so class, welcome
Yeah,
to the Jehu Garcia podcast. Welcome to the Jehu Garcia podcast. You're the chairman of CharIN EVs,
yeah,
right? And so we want to talk to you about good stuff, about charging EVs, because that's what we do here on Jehu Garcia podcast. We talk about EVs and tech in general, but in this case, something really exciting is charging batteries. My audience loves batteries. We love batteries. We have, electric vehicles here that we purchased and also that I built DIY. And so we're very interested in the charging infrastructures and charging technologies and all this stuff. So tell me a little bit about what you do there at CharIN.
yeah. Probably a bit of background information. Thanks for inviting me to your great podcast. So I looked to some of them, and so I'm proud to be
Oh,
part of your family. To my person, I'm an engineer for electrics, and I did things for Mercedes Benz and BMW, developing some tiny things like laser projection, LED, and controls for doors and handles and roof. And I was part of communication controls in the car. So in my early ages, I was introducing computer technology to the car. So that was almost 30 years ago. And so that was all hardwired and nobody was speaking about computers. And that was my first job, to introduce several components in several areas of the car and to connect those control units by a communication protocol. And so imagine 30 years ago, what is a communication protocol? Do they need the customer that? And that was quite innovative at those stages. The technology was called CAN, the Controller Area Network. That
yes.
was a bit aligned to the LAN we used to have. And that was new 30 years ago, but currently, so the car is full of in-car networking, and there is Ethernet in, and there's CAN in. So I developed on FlexRay, that is for independent electrical steering. And so I'm totally fancy on these innovational stuff in the cars, and the car industry has money and visions. And I was part from the beginning, hopefully not for the end. And yeah, I'm in a family of three daughters, and that is a fascinating story because they are educated, very environmental. And so we have a lot of discussions. So what are you doing, father? Are you working in that bloody car industry? So what is your part in that game? And so I'm happy to have been moved to electric mobility because that seems to be acceptable for my family. They love EVs. I'm driving an i3 from BMW. That is, hopefully you know that, a
Yeah.
bit different shape. And that was, I was part of the development team of the i3 in,
Wow.
that was 2010.
2010.
And so we said, okay, we need to make a creative thing. Nobody have ever seen before. A lot of recycled material in, very sustainable. We
Mm.
re-question everything. And the only failure was the customer at those time did not accept that as we expected in volumes.
Mm.
And so we have seen the development of Tesla coming in, very customer oriented. And so we had a philosophy. The i3 is much more efficient. We make better use of material, but at the end we have to go for the customer. And almost 5, 6 years ago, so I had the vision of the electromobility conquering the world. So, okay, what we need is infrastructure and a global agreement. How do we charge and recharge the cars? And just from experience, I got a couple of my friends together. Okay, let's make a great thing. Let's found an association dedicated to charging and the future. And that was fancy because that was 6 years ago. And so we had electromobility. We had a couple of 100,000 cars on the streets, but everybody has been curious. Is that the future or not? And shall we stick on gasoline and what happens? And that was almost the origin to bring 8 people together because you need that for founding an association. I was asking as an engineer what's necessary. you need 8 people, a cashier, a chairman, and some in the board. It's okay. We do as less as necessary for founding that to be effective and not so waterhead driven. And so we need to have that globally, and let's put people from all over the world into an organization from different industries. Because that is the difference from EVs. So up today, the car industry can make their product quite independent. So you have your factory, you get your gasoline somewhere, and we have great competition, and it works. And the main difference with the electromobility is so we are dependent from energy, from chargers. So there is nothing on the streets. And so what shall be done? I say, okay, the only solution is to agree on a global technology and to agree among different industries, from data, from semiconductor, from car industry. Energy is quite interesting to me because that is a different industry to my knowledge. So I've experienced very, very competitive, and the best is getting the money. And energy industry is regulated, controlled, restricted, and so. But it does not help. We have to connect those industry, and if not, so we would totally fail on electromobility. And so we started that, and coming from 10 to 20 to 100 members, and so by increasing membership, we opened offices. So, okay, where is business in the world? Okay, it's the Asian region. We opened an office in Hong Kong and in Beijing, and so we have a North America office in California, and we have an office in Brussels for political affairs. We have one in Yokohama, Japan, and we have one in Seoul in Korea, and we moved to all these places where it seemed to have developments in electromobility, and that is a kind of spirit of that organization. That is, CharIN stands for Charging Interface Initiative. So that is, it sounds like charging, but it's meaning charging interface. So that is a connection from charger to car. And the initiative is the association, and that was born in the team of us 8 to say, okay, that was an initiative. And now that is one of the biggest worldwide organizations of companies. We have almost all car manufacturers in. So that is from the 20 leading brands of the world, we have 18. And that is the big players. That is Toyota and GM and Ford and Volkswagen. So they are in. So 18 of the top 20. And we have all the newbies in. So that is Tesla, that is Lucid Motors, that is Faraday Future, that is Karma, that is the upcoming
Rivian.
companies.
Rivian.
Rivian, yes, you're good prepared. No? So and that is quite important to them to get easy access to those big guys. No? So in former times, so we had the big playing the game, so that GM, Ford, and Chrysler for the US, and the big German brands for Europe, and so that was a bit sophisticated. Okay, so we are leading the world. So we are building 10 million cars a year, and so we are selling 14 millions per year in the States. And by founding that open association, so we opened access to technology, to knowledge, to bring new people in, to exchange. So what happens in the traditional industry? What is a new impression? I remember one nice story. So when we were in the early stages with the Chinese and new startups, so okay, where are you coming from? And so I had a colleague from car industry say, okay, we have the car in the center, but we are bright. So we don't only think car. So we have a 360-degree view around the car. So there is an ecosystem, there is a cloud, there is a customer, and we have been proud. Okay. So even if we're car guys, so we have a broad view. And so we had a Chinese guys coming in. He put the customer in the center of his circle, put the services around, and somewhere in the upper right edge, so you could identify a car. It's like, that is good, because we are all working on the same subject, and we have totally different understanding. And that is one of the benefits and fortunes of such an organization. Whatever happens, you can learn from each other. You must not adopt to that, and you can question it, who is right and wrong, but to give the room for an open discussion. So that is almost the story behind CharIN, and so I'm a bit proud. So if we put the gross income from all this company together, so we are number 4 in the world industry.
Wow.
And if you just put the net income of those companies, and it's BP, and that is Shell, and that is all the big oils, they have a couple of $100 billion sales a year. And so if you put that all together, so we are number 4 worldwide.
Wow.
So almost a bit of story, a bit of history. And the difference is these cross-industry perspective. So typically you have associations dedicated to cars, association dedicated to energy, dedicated to communication, dedicated to semiconductor, and that has already been in place. And the difference is to bring that are different people with different languages. A car guy is speaking different language than an energy guy, and so you are talking around, say, okay, that is my interpretation, the next is telling that. I'm wondering what is he, and doing it between different industries, one challenge. And the next is to do it on a global place, to imagine, to have India. We have an office in
Yeah.
India,
Wow.
great society, great people, but with an own mindset and an own culture and own way how to make business, a bit around. You have the Germans, very precise, my expectation, doing that. And to have them all in a table and they are all in competition and everybody is trying to make a market profit out of his own business. So that is not an easy game to say, okay, we are meeting and we are open our books to everybody. And that is, I'm really a bit surprised that works really well up to now. And probably the success factor is so we try to communicate very familiar to each other. So we have these global directors in different places of the world. So we try to meet two times a year with the complete teams. So you have the dark brown, the intermediate brown, the like me, a bit rosa, and so that is really a kind of trust, of cultural engagement. So those people who are in, so they are willing to communicate with different cultures, and so we cultivated that organization, and that is we respect local local needs. So, okay, if the Chinese would fight for China, it's okay, and if the Indians fight for India and the Koreans for Korea, the Japans and the Europeans, we formed some local hubs. So, okay, our CharIN director is the advocate of that region. And you have to bring in your voice. And CharIN is a global organization currently located in Berlin. And so that is not that we are a Berlin German organization. It's a global organization with different arms, and those arms are interacting together. So that is a bit of history of that organization, where CharIN comes from, and the intention is really to harmonize and standardize the charging interface, to develop technologies for the future. So we have many projects, and a third arm is communication. And currently we are deeply involved in lobbyism. So as we have stronger CO2 regulations coming up everywhere in the world, and that has a direct impact into the car technology, and so what is the task of a car in a grid, and so what is access to battery, and what could be the benefit, and what does it mean to renewables, and so we are more and more in a political position. And politics in principle, they love us because so we are cross-industry and cross-national. And so if you really want to have a neutral information, so hey guy, what is on batteries and on charging and what is, because we don't have an interest by ourselves to say, okay, we have to fight for our specific industry in our specific country. It's more to get that industry aligned and say, okay, so we can tell you what is feasible and what not. And so that is appreciated by the regulators to say, okay, what is necessary to be regulated. And in Europe, it's a bit more regulated than in the States.
Yeah.
But they need to trust on somebody. And so that means up to now we get a bit more political voice on that.
Wow. Yes. So that's quite a bit to unpack there. Um, you first mentioned that you were involved in coming up with the CAN protocols on
Yeah,
cars.
yeah.
And for those who are watching this that might not know, this is a network that is used in automotive now, right? So that
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
and the main reason is so you don't have to run a bunch of cables everywhere, right? Like
Yeah, that's it.
originally
Yeah.
there was one cable for every device, and
Yeah, you have a bulb and a switch, and between bulb and switch, you need a wire. And with the CAN network, you make a hub of bulbs and a hub of switches, and the connection is the CAN bus, and you can switch. That is transferred into data, and the bulb control unit lights the bulb. And that was the
yes,
CAN, that was called Control Area Network. And that is
yes,
interesting if we're coming to market solutions.
yeah,
So that was when I was 27. So that was my vision. I bring that into the car, and I'm really I have some patents on the CAN bus, and
mm,
I was really involved from the early stages. I was soldering the circuitry around, and so that was really
mm,
funny. 30 years later, so what I did was in my lab, and so I had a very engaged team together. It's okay, we put all the stuff out of that car, and so we created our own electronics because nobody was believing in that. So okay, give me, it's a good challenge. So we had this ignition mechanics, this metal part, as okay. So we just drilled something around and put the electronics directly in, and so we have hired a couple of students and showed that our boss, okay, that is feasible, and CAN is a great bus system. And that is now the interesting factor. I was fascinated, but that was 30 years ago.
yes,
And so when I looked on these Chinese charging system, the GBT or the Japanese one, the CHAdeMO, so
channel.
they started with electromobility and said, okay, CAN is a good technology. I said, yes,
yes,
yes, I know. And there are not too many around who knows it better than me. But where's the vision? So when I was young, there was no CAN, and I said, okay, we have to bring that into market. And you will tell me 30 years later, that is a technology of choice for the future. I say
yes,
no, no, never, no, because the world is turning a bit around and it goes further. And that was a big approach of the CCS system. And so when we started that, that was in the early 2010s. So it's okay. So we need a charging system, and while the Japanese and Chinese said, okay, we need to charge it. So simple protocol is good. CAN is established. CAN is cheap, and so we just put it in. And if there is a need to charge, we say, okay, 1 bit, please charge. One value, 8 bit. That is the voltage. 8 bit for current. That seems to be enough. No? So, okay, it's start of charging, is end of charging. So we are fine with that technology. And that was a difference. And we had tremendously fights in our organizations. So, okay, our bosses asked, why do you need an IP protocol for charging?
mm-hmm.
That was 10 years ago. Remember, 10 years ago. So why do you need for? Why do we pay for? What is the sense behind? We said we need to have the next vision. And so we want to have the car integrated in the world of IP. The
Mm-hmm.
boss said, okay, it costs a lot of money and we don't see that, but we have some very notorious engineers and say, okay, even if you are my boss, we have to care for the future. And so we struggled around, but finally we decided, okay, we need to have that Ethernet technology and IP stacks and what we know. And at the end, we created a vision that the car is yeah, a really IT device, and that car can negotiate it via that interface with energy stock exchange
Mm.
platforms, and so, okay, what is the price of energy, and so we put all that stuff in, and that is more than 10 years ago when we said, okay,
Wow.
sometimes it comes to reality, and we are close before that is
Yeah.
reality, and so it needs some time to prepare. You need to waste 10 times having a powerful interface in. So that was the communication part. The other was okay, when we introduce a connector that has to cover a couple of 100 kilowatts.
Yes, that
And
is a
so,
big
but
challenge, right?
yeah,
350, is that what a
we
standard said? 350 kilowatt, is that
know that
currently?
is currently 450.
Oh,
That is by
Jesus.
technology, and
Oof.
350 kilowatt is that what is in the market currently.
That's
And
what's in the
the
market.
design allows 450 at least, and we can expand it a bit more than four, but by 450 is okay.
Wow.
And the same story, our bosses ask us, why do we need such a connector? So if we have just these multi-city vehicles and they have very small areas around, we said, okay, we need to have a vision that is by today,
Yes.
but in future that could be a replacement of gasoline cars. So again, we
Yes.
went to our bosses, said, okay, we need to have a design which is which stays for 20 years, because we need to bring the industry in, we need to commercialize the products, we have to agree on that, and we can't change every couple of years to identify, oh, there is a new application coming, let's change, because infrastructure lasts for at least 10 years.
Yeah.
And so that was all quite wise at that stage of those people who made decisions to design a system which comes to reality or brings the functionality to vision 10 years later, because that costs energy. And that was a big mistake of the Japanese and the Chinese, because they had a too short looking, and they are now really struggling to exchange the hardware. The protocol is not supplying every need of the customer, and so the CHAdeMO is gone, the GBT is gone. They copied 90% of what we did in CCS. That is a bit of different shape, but it's a lot of copy. Copy is good, because we are selling cars to every country, and so it's easier if they copy as much as possible, but they stick still on CAN. And they
Mm-hmm.
are building connectors and adapters and CHAdeMO to Chao G 3.0 to, and I'm sure that will drive them crazy, because you have more and more legacy in the market. So that's wonderful, because the Chinese had a good performance, and they occupied the world market with their EVs, and they built 500,000 chargers. But
Oh,
that
wow.
is all rubbish, because they
Oh,
build
damn.
chargers which are already in replacement.
Yes.
And we see a move in the regions of the world. So Europe is currently 100,000 units ahead of China. So in Europe, we have 100,000 more cars registered than China. And so that sees, okay, Europe is going with modern technology, with innovation, and they can all stick on their investments. That's okay. My old i3 that is charging with, that is 48, 50 kilowatts, and that is the same charger than the Porsche Taycan. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It works. Same hardware, same software, same plug-in and charge, same communication, same interoperability testing, and so that is good for industry stability. And as the European Union decided to have having had CCS mandatory, so that was a breakthrough, because that's okay. That's a technology. Let's step in. As long as you're discussing, is it the Tesla or is it the Chinese or Japanese? Everybody is waiting, and so that was one of the breakthrough points. That was a decision made in 2014, and that got valid for 2017. And nobody, well, or everybody knew you can't escape if you don't adopt to that system. And so
Yeah.
what we have is very innovative, capable system technology for at least Europe, North America, South America, Korea. The market adopted, and all the Japanese and Chinese coming to Europe, they supply CCS. Tesla is an interesting point. So they make use of CCS in the Model 3 for the complete European market. So they
Oh, I
updated their
see.
superchargers by CCS, and
It's a different
they can.
connector, though, right? It's
Pardon?
a modified connector, or is it the
No,
standard
it's
connector?
they directly take the
Oh,
CCS connector
wow.
as it is and say, okay, because um, yeah, we have billions of infrastructure project money in Europe, and so we are crazy
Yeah.
building high
Okay.
power charging networks, and the same as Electrify America is doing in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And the Tesla guys decided, okay, give the opportunity to my customer. So even if I have some superchargers, but besides the supercharger, we have tens of thousands of CCS chargers on the routes. And when every so the Model 3 is one of the heaviest user of the non-Tesla charging infrastructure.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that makes sense. And so that I love the Tesla guys. I had, or that was 7 or 8 years ago, a talk to Elon and asked him, what are you doing with your proprietary charging network? And he said, okay, it's necessary because I need that for my product and I can't wait for anybody helping me.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'm a car guy and infrastructure has to be done by somebody else. And that is not valid to him. He said, okay, no, 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 no. We need to cover that. But he says, I'm immediately switching to another technology so that if that is mature, if it is capable to cover the customer needs, and that is not my necessity to have that for lifetime. And you can see that, and that is important for North America
Yeah.
because they adopt it and they deliver they update the Model S and X so that they can charge in the CCS network. That is
Ah.
different in the United States because United States is still this really proprietary connector of Tesla, so that looks a bit
Yes.
like a
Smaller.
mouth, and that
Yeah.
is different. And I'm wondering if they adopt to CCS in North America as well, because the story is the same as in Europe. So make use of these really growing networks. And even if one automobile industry is very powerful and strong, you can't cover that demand for your fleet by building more and more of these chargers. And best is to share the existing charging arenas with more and more customers, and that is caring for competition that gives customer quality. So the sites are well used, and so that happens on the technology. And and that is the reality currently between all these technologies. And so you hear there's a plug war, or the associations are fighting against what else. It's not the association, it's reality is making the game, and we have to be good, we have to be quick, and the market has to accept, and the customer must love it. And these associations like CHAdeMO or CharIN, so we are supporting that and trying to do good things, but it means nothing if an association says it's good or not good. The market
It's
will
gonna
decide.
dictate.
Unfortunately, so we did that, and yeah, I'm totally convinced about the CCS system because there is one tiny thing behind. So we say, okay, that is a one system approach. So, okay, the customer probably does not understand what is AC, what is DC, what is high power, medium power. So I give him a flap, and instead of a fuel pump gauge, put a connector in. And the car manufacturer is caring for if it is a small AC one, is this in combination DC AC, just plug it in at that place and you get your energy. And the good thing is, so okay, we need to supply both technologies with Ethernet and Internet IP protocol. And so we call that ISO 15118, probably heard that. That is the technology behind the communication. But in principle, it's a kind of an IP protocol stack behind. And that works as it is on PLC, independently on pin outs. You just
Mm.
modulate the signal on one of those pins. And so you can say, even if my AC connector is full of pins, we just put the communication on top of that. And every car having an AC connector can have new functionality. So we are in the introductory phase of plug and charge. Probably heard about that. So you just put your plug in. There's some certificates moving around, asking who is the owner of. He's putting some steps on the information that is stored, and you have a secure communication that is going directly to your bill. And that will, the customer will love that. And that is, Electrify announced that 2 days ago for the complete
Oh,
Electrify networks. So we will have a couple of networks in Europe coming early next year with that technology. And so we start with DC, but that is the principle of CCS. If we have a functionality on CCS, it works with AC, with DC, and in every power class. We're starting with 3.6 kilowatts in the lower end. And we have currently in preparation the so-called Megawatt charging system.
wow.
That is going to long-haul transport, to trucks, and that is we have just spoken about 350 kilowatts. We are now speaking about 4.5 megawatts.
Wow.
Cool, or cool, isn't
Jeez.
it?
It's same
Yeah,
connector?
and done.
Same connector, or is it a bigger
Yeah,
modified connector?
it's different. It's the same communication protocol, the same
Okay.
security mechanism that is making reuse of how the way the connector is male and female. But we decided for bigger connector
Bigger
pins,
connector.
and that
Yeah.
is a specific one, and that goes to ferries, that is going to
Yeah.
avionics, and that is all the boats and ships. So that is at Côte d'Azur in the Mediterranean. So they're all going electric. So that is not just cars. Everybody is going electric.
Everybody's going electric, yes.
Yeah, and what we at CharIN, we give all them the opportunity. If they step in, we have Lilium. They are making the VTOL flight objects, and so they have easily access. They join CharIN, and they have the variety of semiconductors, of chargers, of inverters, of cables, of cooling. They are asking the society, what did you experience? And that is a
Mm.
fortune of the car industry. So that is on quality, that is on price, and that is mass production. And
Yeah.
imagine you have a new startup, an idea. You must not invent a charger or charging technology on that. Let the car guys have done that. They put 10 to 20,000 man years to develop the CCS system. And now it's the exploitation phase. Just make juice of technology. And in that case, it's necessary not to have too many of these alternatives. And honestly speaking, the CHAdeMO is dead. That is a Japanese technology located in Japan. So we appreciate their efforts. So they have many cars in the European market, but the volume is decreasing, and the other is increasing steeply. And so they have closely many chargers as CCS has, but CCS has 350 kilowatts, at least 150. The CHAdeMO has mainly 50 because there's no CHAdeMO car needing more than 50 kilowatts.
Yeah.
And that was probably the unexpected. So the customer wants to have these short recharging times. And in
Yes.
former times, some argue to say, okay, you can be confident with 50 kilowatt and electromobility is for urban transport, and there is no necessity. And that was probably the misinterpretation of the Japanese, that there is no need for this high power charging. And often I hear some of them, they are still complaining, say, okay, we don't see a need of 250 kilowatts and 300, but the market says, okay, we have
Yeah.
products, the customer love it, and that means if an association sees that or not, that
Yeah.
is,
No,
yeah,
it's hard to understand, like, until you go through it, right? Like I have my converted EV, and J1772 was fine for me because I
yeah,
charge at home
yeah,
mainly, right?
yeah,
But it's a big problem if you're traveling, right? Because then
yeah,
you're like, I only have X amount of time. I don't have hours, 6 hours to charge my car when I'm going
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah,
So it wasn't until I bought a Tesla and
yeah,
we experienced 100, 200 kilowatt charging or whatever, that we are like, oh, this is what it's needed. Like, you go in here
yeah,
for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and
yeah,
you're on your
yeah,
way. And so
yeah,
it it's kind of hard to understand this thing until you go through it, until you're using it every day. And yeah, I could totally see 400, 350, 400
yeah,
kilowatts. That is where it
Yeah,
needs to
we
go.
say it's so we name it. It's a 5 minutes charge for 100 kilometers.
For
So
100
that is
kilometers.
our threshold. Okay, if
Five
it takes me five
minutes.
minutes for 100 kilometers or what is 80 miles around, so that is suitable,
Yes.
and so that will satisfy the customer. And if we put that together with this plug and charge, that means you plug in, you get your coffee, going back, your car is charged. It costs you
Yes.
15 minutes. You have a 15-minute net break.
Yeah.
And if you are standing at the fuel pump, so you're standing 5 minutes at the fuel pump, you have to go to the cashier to pay for, and
Yeah.
so your net break time is less than 15 minutes, and so that is by evaluation. So the customer accepts 15, 20 minutes, it's okay for him, that is for coffee, for toilet, and if you can recharge your car. And there's a very interesting aspect. I'm currently in projecting a long haul truck project, so going through Germany. And so they have a 45 minutes break if they put the oranges in Spain and they are driving, and after 4.5 hours, there is there's a need of a break by regulation. So it's
By
okay, you need to
regulation.
have a break, and that break is currently paid.
Okay.
And no, there is a break time, so he has to sign that. So I did that 45 minutes break. And so the transport logistic company said, okay, if we could recharge in the forced break time of the driver, so that would be great because it cost me nothing. Fueling costs money, no? So because fueling is working time for the driver, and automated recharging is nothing. It's you must not pay the driver for that service. And so that is okay if we want to recharge in a 45 minutes. So we need around 1 megawatt charging power. So that is a European use case.
Okay.
And so the North American use cases, they have just 30 minutes break time. They are driving longer distances, and they are allowed to drive longer. They have shorter brakes, and they have better aerodynamics. But
Mm,
that is the same use case from logistics. I need to recharge the next trip in 30 minutes,
in 30
and
minutes.
they need 2 megawatt energy. And
Mm,
so that was how we defined the megawatt charging system. Okay, we are coming from the user, from the customer. He is defining technology and not an association. He,
mm, there you
and that
go.
is the difference. So a bit the American European spirit, so being user centric. The
Yeah.
Japanese is TEPCO energy centric. So the energy industry decided what is good for the customer. No? What is good for the grid is good for the customer.
Yeah.
Totally wrong. And the same is for the Chinese, that is state grid and national grid and a bit of government. And they decide what is good for the customer. And so we
Yeah.
will see what happens in the world. So if the customer is told what is good for him, or if we say, okay, listen to the customer, if he wants to have that 15 minutes for passenger cars, if we want to recharge the truck in 45 minutes, we have to bring systems on the market. And that is one of our big challenges, to bring that megawatt charging technology that was really predefined in CharIN. We had a big festival in September with the NREL labs, and we know how the connector is look like and how the driver feels with the connector. So we also experience. We brought that to international standardization. And so we hope to get a one-piece connector for megawatts and not having the Chinese or Japanese coming up with their own approach. And that is the help of CharIN, because we incorporated a lot of Chinese and Japanese companies within CharIN. And so we are just CharIN is just concentrated on industry. So we don't allow any governmental body to step in. It's like, no, if we allow governmental to step in, they want to make governmental influence. And then we have Americans and Indians and Chinese. And so that is my wording to that. If we let them in, so we are lost. And say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
if we could agree on worldwide industry, we can guide the governments worldwide what is a good technology, what is good for the customer, what is feasible. And so we guarantee to say, okay, we are all in competition in different parts of the world. Nobody must care about any compliance issues, because we are compliant by ourselves because so many different interest groups. So there is no single party occupying anything. And so I really hope when we bring that megawatt charging system to standardization, that we get the Chinese and Japanese on board. And that is an interesting story to tell about the CharG. So that is the successor of CHAdeMO and the successor of GBT. So they identified, so I do not have enough charging power. I need to develop a new connector, still with CAN, it's okay. And that stuff is capable about 600, 700 kilowatts.
Okay.
Or it's 600. No?
600.
It's okay, you already did a wrong thing because if we are... Yeah,
because you're not
really,
going megawatt, yes.
Yeah, it's really the same story. You have to be visionary. And if we currently define a need of 1 megawatt for Europe and 2 for the North America, it's necessary to have a specification for 4.5 megawatt because we are just starting on that.
Yes.
And the Chinese and Japanese said, okay, we are confident with 600 kilowatt because that is more than CCS.
Yeah.
They say, but there is a threshold. So with 350, 450, so that is complete enough for buses, for local transport, for passenger cars. So that is in that level. And if you have 600 or 450, so that is not a major differentiating point. And that is, as an engineer, that is a totally stupid thing that they developed a new charging connector, which is incompatible to the old, incompatible to CCS, sticking on the old CAN technology. And that is already out when it comes to market, probably next year or when that happens. But that is this governmental influence. Now, if you have a strong government and a push on that and a strong energy industry, they are defining the system approach, but that is not visionary. That is a 5 years planning strategy.
So. Well, and the problem is the manufacturers now have to make a decision with which system they're going to support, right? And it's hard for them, right? Because if they have one strong one or they have pressure into doing one or over the other one, and then the customer loses because...
but today not really. So we accept to have that technologies, and China is in China. Everybody knows if you go to China, you have to follow the Chinese rules.
Okay.
It is as it is.
Yeah.
Europe is clear, North America is clear, Korea, Australia, New Zealand. So almost all other countries are on CCS. Japan is on CHAdeMO old. China is on China. CHAdeMO will probably not survive, and it's okay for that specific area. And we argue, so in principle, it's good to have the CHAdeMO GBT convergence line because we have, instead of 2, we have just 1 for Japan, China. But that is not really strong. And the expectation was that China is conquering all markets and they have the highest growth rates and the Chinese technology is coming to the rest of the world. That does not happen. So the world is on CCS. CCS is increasing by 200, 300% per year. The GBT is by minus 40, minus 30%. So they are really on the downturn. We are on the upturn. And at the end, who is the winner? The winner is best performance, best price, best quality. And that comes in principle with volume. With volume, you have a cheaper product and a better product, so that is, and that could have been the Chinese one, but currently it does not look that the Chinese are in. And it's too late for them because we are going to 40 million EVs in Europe, at least for 2030. And so they can't compete these speed of our market. And it's okay, as long as China stays in China, it's okay. If they would go to different market to compete, but that is not easy because our charging networks, so
they're different.
That is tremendously high building rate every day in new charging areas, so that will all be on CCS. And it takes some couple of years till this CharG is developed. You have products on, and if they have that product, you have a complete infrastructure ready on CCS. It's okay. I can sell you a CharG car. So okay, where's the charger? Yeah, my China
Here's
is
an
good. It's
adapter.
okay. And you're coming to finances. Okay, what is the argument to change the connector? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 600 kilowatt instead of 450. So, okay, yeah, it's good. Who does need it? Yeah, probably. What does it cost? Ah, we have to rebuild 150,000 chargers by 10 billion euros to get
Yeah.
access to these wonderful Chinese, and that is market. So even if the Chinese would be good, which is not from my perspective, it's nice, but it's not good. It's a late copy, but it's not really good. There's no chance to go to the market if there is no substantial benefit behind the technology. And
Hmm.
that is not the shape of plastic or the importance of government of one country, is the performance. And this new developed stuff does not have performance. And that is you can't, in a free market, you can't develop things which don't have a unique selling proposition or a specific customer feature. And that is, from my perspective, that is a plug and charge is one coming in. And that gets difficult for those because all our cars can have that. The customer will love that. And the Chinese need to try to tell their customers, unfortunately, we can't do that.
Hmm.
Um, they have some other opportunities. Okay, we have a state-controlled plug and charge. We put it on CAN. We send 1,000 new engineers to make it. They will make it anyhow, but that is not on a global standard, and that will stay locally.
Yeah.
And that is an interesting point behind these communication diet. There's a lot of data and customer privacy, and
Yeah.
that cars is going more and more digital. So for me, the connector stuff is over. It's done. So CCS is in the significant markets with a good growth rate, and we have all the necessary companies producing that stuff, even the Chinese. So you have Chinese government, you have Chinese industry. So, okay, if you want to have a CCS connector, I sell you one. If you need a CCS car, I give you one. And the Chinese just introduced a European car, so that is in the 10,000 euro area. That is
Okay.
coming with CCS, that is coming from China, and they are adaptive to the market. So the industry does not complain. So, okay, CCS is okay, so I can sell my car, charging is available, performance is ready. And that goes to the step where we are currently working on. So we are creating within CharIN a data trust center to say, okay, who is the owner of the certificates? That is like in the banking process, when you put your card in, there is some processes behind to checking um, the availability, and that has been already implemented, the idea, in 10 years ago in that ISO 15118 of CCS. And now
Ah.
we exploit that technology, but that is a big discussion currently. Who is the head of data certificates? And our
Yeah.
members said, okay, we can imagine only one institution doing that neutral, because all other, so Electrify America is Electrify America. It's a business company in the United States that is probably not neutral to everybody to get in and get out. And
Hmm.
the CharIN idea is to have a neutral instance where everybody can adopt. And we have a lot of startups, innovative companies. Okay, so we are hosting that cryptology, and that is free to everybody. It's not free to use, but it's by a shared pricing system. So, okay, the server costs 100,000. If we have 10 participants and everybody pays 10,000, you can have access, and that is a good principle because that works. And if we can share that by 100, it gets 10 times cheaper if we increase the membership base. And we are a non-profit, and so we're just giving service to our members. Okay, if you want to sell your customer plug and charge, you can get access to the server, go to the CharIN website. So that is planned for next year. That will be a big,
Wow.
big step. And that will, yeah, because I'm visionary any longer. So even I'm 30 years older, and that
Wow.
going from one level to the next. And that is in the next is plug and charge. And the next is the V2G. So you
V2G.
can harvest your battery in future as an
Yes.
owner. And that is, yeah, tremendously new. No? Today you put some fuel in, you burn it, and it's gone. And
Yes.
everybody is complaining because you're a polluter and ignorant and whatever.
Yeah.
And the news, you are buying a device and you can get $1,000 or $2,000 a year if you make intelligent energy buy and sell services.
Yes.
And that is a part of this decentralized world. So in former times, we had the central power plant and distribution network going to the customer. We had the big server farms. And in principle, we are turning to these decentral units. You have an individual household that is independent from energy. You create your EV and your PV and going to the car. And
Yeah.
so that gives the customer the opportunity to trade. It's okay, if I
Yeah.
can sell my energy of my battery when I don't need that, who is willing to pay for? And
Yes.
so currently we are we are not selling our energy in German to France, but we pay France if they buy our energy. So if you have
Because you have
this
too
high
much.
wind and high photovoltaics, it costs you $50 per 1,000 kilowatts if somebody is willing to take that energy. That is a situation if you have a lot of wind and a lot of sun. So that is in late summer, so nobody knows where to go with that energy. And
Yeah.
imagine, so, okay, I'm as a customer, if you give me $10, you can fill my battery.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Get
Okay,
paid
okay,
to
do it. Ne?
charge.
And the next is, oh, unfortunately, you have a lot of rain next day and there is no wind. And somebody said, okay, could you give me a kilowatt hour or 10? So what are you willing to give me? I'll give you $10. And that is
Mhm.
totally complex to make regulations for that. From the technical perspective, that is implemented. So the CCS can do that, the communication can do that, the battery controller can do that, but that goes to the heart of energy distribution, and that is for me fascinating because it
Yeah.
turns the society to allow decentralized organization to take the lead. Or
Yeah.
do we need, as inhabitants, the power plant, the energy industry, and they are guiding us what to do? And that is a crash of understanding. And that is interesting because I'm a car guy, and cars are not so as stupid as you imagine. You see that, and what Tesla is doing, some others are in the same areas.
Mhm.
That industry is quite capable of doing crazy things. And for that, they are all on the brake to say, okay, if we allow them to introduce their technology, it could be that the car industry is making nice business out of energy.
Energy.
And
Yeah.
that will happen because we will not make any more business by increasing the number of sales of cars. So I assume that time is over. So we will stabilize that and flatten it a bit. We will replace the gasolines by electrical. We have new kinds of mobility, but nobody's really believing that we are coming to 100 millions a car as it has been expected before. And so what happens to an industry? So you are losing income. It's okay. If we lose by cars, probably we can make nice services to the customers around. And that is the open point. So even if we have the CCS and the ISO 15118 and the IP stack and technology there, are we allowed to give that for customers' benefit? But and that is on the other hand fascinating. If the customer is getting benefit out of energy harvesting
Trading.
and sales, and that gets money, the customer is demanding such a car. And if you want to
Yeah.
sell him a gasoline, you would say, okay, I can get $2,000 out of my EV. That is for 7 years, 14,000. So if you want to sell me a gasoline, I want to get it 14,000 less.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and so the vision behind this, you can force the industry to introduce electric cars and you can fight against and for and whatever. But if we really would have free market rules,
Mhm.
the customer would switch over to electric because it's cheaper and better for him. And that has an impact on our environment.
Yes.
Yeah? And because we are all money driven, so okay, if I can get a buck out of that, and EVs are similar to gasoline. My wife does not know if it is gasoline or diesel, and so how many PS and cylinders. So she's not interested, and she's probably not too much interested if that is an electric driven. He says, okay, if it is comfortable, it costs the same price. I get it, so I immediately switch over. And yeah, that is some of the background why it is necessary to have that powerful charging technology and not to trust on TEPCO in Japan and not to trust on the Chinese government with national grid because they have different ideas on what's good for the customer.
Yes, I didn't know this about CCS that had
Yeah,
this implementation for the grid to car to grid, right? Which is a thing that
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's not happening enough, right? There's currently no
yeah.
cars in the U.S. that can do that, and in fact, Elon
Mm.
expressed some, idea that that customers don't want that because when are they gonna charge back or their battery? But I think with higher volumes of
Yeah,
implementation, right? With more cars of these, then it will
yeah.
become a thing. It will
Yeah, that
happen.
is yeah, that is business. No? So if you can aggregate thousands of cars, so you have a big energy volume, and it's easier to trade bigger volume than to trade for every individual. So that is was just what is possible. I can connect to the stock exchange for energy,
Hmm.
but I'm sure. So if there's an aggregator, say, okay, I make you a nice business with your 100,000 friends in Berlin. I can sell and I can make a better price because I have a bigger volume. But to Elon, Tesla is a registered energy supplier in the
That's
UK now.
right. Okay. Yes. He say
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no grid to car to
No,
grid,
no, no.
except he's in the back end
Yeah,
signing
yeah,
deals,
yeah.
right?
And you can see Volkswagen, so they have an energy brand founded, and you
Wow.
see some movements around, and they are the car guys are in principle in a pole position because they
Hmm.
sell the car to the customer. They can bundle, they can make easy
Yes.
offers to them, and that is if Tesla get that registration as energy trader, every other car manufacturer can do it as well. And that is
Yes.
all for sake of the customer because the automobile industry is very competitive and we are all striving for customer sake. And so we will kill us against everybody in every part of the world to get the best and best customer interface, and that will drive the cost down for the customer at the end. But it takes us 5 years to change this energy distribution system because I'm sure they are fighting against. And I'm currently in struggle with some regulators in Germany. It's okay, we force you in the new regulation to give that flexibility by law. And we have another idea. So if the car is demanding too much energy, it's a burden to my grid. And so we need a regulation to cut off the charging process.
Mm.
And so there are two positions. That's okay. Whatever happens, I'm the owner of the grid. If the car wants to have energy, I cut it off. The demand is too high. We are coming from the other side. So let's integrate renewables, educate the customer to charge the car during daytime where there's a lot PV and wind available. And so please make a regulation which gives the customer flexibility of charging windows in the morning, in the evening, and they are all complaining. No, it's too complicated, and you have to have um, measurement instruments in the transformer houses, and it's currently not planned to do that. It's okay, whatever you planned, and so you are lost if you are try to keep your old technology stable. That does not help at all. The only problem is that a lot of these energy companies, they are partly owned by commonalities, and that is not in competition, and that is not a free market, and so they will never fight for the customer because they are themselves very closely regulated, and so okay, I'm not allowed to make business out of that, and it's better to have a stable grid than to have a business which is flexible but not as stable. And that is the CCS is having that. The communication definition is from 2014, and that takes a couple of years from standardization to the new level. And the interesting thing is that communication technology is quite universal. We use that for wireless charging. So that is
Wireless.
independent from the CCS connector, but that is the same communication protocol that is going
Mm.
wireless, but that is the same data because that is internet technology. You can
Yes.
do that by CAN. You need to cut down the CAN frames to put it wireless, to recollect it to stupid. And I'm asking, where's the vision of those guys sticking on CAN? And that is a funny story. I'm one of the only, I programmed that, I defined the bit frames, and I can really say it's not feasible. We take that for these pantograph systems. That is for some public buses. They
Hmm.
connect with that. mover. And the communication is the ISO 1511 as it is with a CCS connector. And so that shows the power of that technology. So to be capable, and that is going to 10 megabits. It's not too much on the way of internet thinking, but it's a lot for data transfer and security. And so we can expand it to 100 megabit if
Okay.
necessary. And so I had an idea to download a video stream during charging. So if you put your, it's just my personal idea, I did not come to
Okay.
reality. If you connect it and you have the automatic billing and charging,
Uh-huh.
and you can control the charging process because the technology says, okay, that is start of process, that is end of process. You can say, okay, you make a complete video download during charging. You know when to start, when to stop. You can block the connector for 10 seconds if the stream is not completely downloaded. But that has not come to reality because that is probably going wireless, and it's a nice try.
Oh, I
But
see.
that is from the idea, if you're going to standard internet technology, it makes life easy because everybody is used to. You can buy the components in competition, and
Yeah.
that's all done. And yeah, and the only is so we do that on these power line communication that is a bit more expensive. And the standard Ethernet connector, that wired one, that is millions of pieces a year, so that is quite cheap. And this power line communication chip is just going to automotive currently, and so we assume to have a 20 million pieces a year, but that is nothing compared to the other technology. So there's a bit header of that PLC technology, and probably in 10 years we switch over to a wired solution with Ethernet basic technology of today, but we stick on the communication and ideas behind, and that is just make mass production volume and make use of the technology.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah, so CCS is going places.
Yeah,
It's future proof from what I
yeah,
can hear in these new ventures and these new ways that we're going to use this technology. That is pretty cool. And it's already in the car, so it totally makes sense because that's how the car
yeah,
communicates. Everything communicates. I just bought a bunch of scooter batteries,
yeah,
for like little scooters. And the battery BMS system was shut down. It's off. And so we had to figure out how to sniff the CAN communication between
mhm,
the two devices and then replicate that so that we can turn on our batteries. And we successfully did that. So now we're using those batteries secondhand, right?
mhm.
And so we're building things with them. We're building storage devices. We're building like portable storage devices. But you need that little CAN controller to spit out the command so
Yeah,
that the
and
BMS can
that
pick
is
up.
the benefit of CAN because that is an understandable technology. So I
Mm-hmm.
could follow that idea, so it's understandable, and that can be programmed by everybody everywhere in the world. And
Yes.
these Ethernet PLC driven ISO 15118, so that is very dynamic. It's a bit of you need a knowledge of a software stack and in which layer, and that can't be done easily. The sniffer is more expensive and more complicated. The data rate is higher, and so that is a difficulty for some countries to adopt because if they don't have an industry, so that goes to India.
Uh-huh.
And interestingly, they don't have that powerful industry you're expecting. They are good in pharmacy, they are good in software services, but they don't have the supplier first tier industry to OEMs. And they are all complaining because you need a couple of engineers to get understood into the CCS communication system, as it is a bit complicated. And so if you are just cost driven, say, okay, that project cost me 5 engineers, and if I go to CAN, so I can hire a student, he gives me something similar for a cheaper price. And that is for all those who are on simple charging, so they decide for CANs, okay, because but that is not the future, and I don't trust in a country or industry who is confident with easy solutions. If the
Yeah.
easy solutions are not
Future proof.
expandable or
Yeah.
whatever, and that is, but that is a discussion, and everybody is right. I can understand. Okay, you have to give me the communication controller for nothing, and India was easily adapt. But what happens in India? So the Koreans are shipping cars to India. The Koreans is CCS. So they have the first product, the second, the third. The Germans are shipping cars to India, coming with CCS. India has a kind of flexibility. It's okay, we allow everybody. It's okay. Indians, it's probably not good for your country if you allow everything, because infrastructure is your problem. And if you allow 4 or 5 standards, that comes back to India and to your government, but they are not too much controlling, and they are discussing and figuring out what is good. Said, okay, premium cars get CCS, buses get CCS, and if the Chinese come with GBT, we put GBT in. But at the end, it comes with products, and there are so many the new Indian premium cars are coming with CCS, and the volume is increasing very steep. What do? They implement chargers with CCS because they have products to be charged.
Yeah.
And so I assume so, because the CCS wave is so steeply growing that most of those cars shipped to India are coming with CCS. You will have the infrastructure. If the infrastructure goes with that cars, the Indian industry will decide, okay, if I don't adopt to that charger, I have to care for another one. And but it depends on speed. And so the Chinese, in principle, they can make speed and they can conquer complete markets. But currently the cards are good at the free market technologies distributed. So
Yeah.
the countries have some. We have these American China, the Indian China, the Europe, US, and as long as they are struggling, I assume the Indians are not quite open to get technology from a country where they have political discussions. So that plays for the free world, and that was my vision and intention. So the little Claas Bracklo fighting against the Chinese, and so that was one of the purposes of CharIN. So is it possible to bring the free world together in an association based on technology to compete with local governments?
Yeah.
And that was interesting. So I have traveled a couple of times to China, and we discussed what is good, what is right. And I cut that off 3 or 4 years ago. I said, okay, it does not make sense to me to travel to China because you are not willing to really openly discuss. And I better try to India, where I met people who are open to that. And I was probably one of the first saying the Chinese, no, sorry, I'm not really interested. My time is too valuable to have that bloody discussion. And that is a fortune for me, because I'm employed at BMW as well. As BMW, we go to China and say, okay, if you want that, we give you, because that is clear direction who is buying and who is selling. But as a chairman of China, I say, okay, I don't get value for my invested time.
Wow.
And that makes them crazy. And my wife is complaining, say, Claas, don't be too proud about any other things. But that is when I started these sharing activities, I said, okay, we really put it on a neutral base and on rationals. I say, okay, if it is a benefit, we get in. If there is no benefit, get out. And that is easy for membership. Say, okay, if you don't get the service from CharIN you want to have, feel free to give. As long as you're confident, we serve you and make that. And that is easy because we are mainly on technical objects. Now we're discussing about conformance, interoperability, power classes, definitions, customer interface. So we have what is the expectation for a customer put on a charging pillar. So we come together. So okay, we have all the same customers. So that can be shared information from our members. We put that in, and that gives you some strengths. And that is, for me, really, is it possible to align the complete world, even if one region is trying to occupy markets, to make political things around? And it looks like currently that there's a chance to to win.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, it seems like it is, right? I
Yeah.
have a car coming up. I pre-order a Rivian, and that one comes with
Yeah.
CCS combo. So there will be
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
first time that I will get to experience
Oh,
your
good. Good.
technology and one of my vehicles. What can I
Yeah.
expect? Because here's the thing: the Rivian has the largest battery available in the market right now, right? So as such, it needs a really fast charging port and technology.
Yeah, yeah,
And you guys are future proof, so you guys are basically probably the only ones that can supply with that amount of
yeah.
energy at that rate that that car needs,
Yeah. That will
right?
come with these 4.5 megawatt system, so that works. But there's
Wow.
one technical background. If you put too much energy in, you have to cool down because you have all these inverters and you have high current, and there's a lot of energy gone by cooling. And to get the energy in, you have to cool down the battery pack, and that is really heavy cooling on board of those cars who want to recharge very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's a fate. We will do that, and we have to live with. But we started a CharIN project identifying that issue. So, okay, what would happen if we can cool the car at the charging pillar and not in the car? Just bring the cooling
Ah,
circle into the car.
through the connector.
Yeah.
So the
It's
coolant will go and then cool.
yeah. And
Wow.
imagine it's again a vision. So today you
Wow.
build in these. We have up to 3 cooling circuitries around the car. You have ventilators, you have electronics in that weighs a couple of
Yes.
kilograms. So that costs a lot of money to the customer. That is only for the case if the car is going to the charging point to make use of that big systems. But you are driving 90% and a couple of
Yes.
percent is charging. And that is now we are investigating in. So does it make sense to the industry to go with that specific cooling? And that is good because the CharIN, I love that. You have the competency of the world. You go to Siemens and ABB and GE and GM and say, okay, who has any experience in cooling? And you have the old guys. And that is for CharIN quite interesting. You have all the startups that coming and say, okay, I have a solution for everything. Bring them together,
Yeah.
and that works. So that is one of our things. The other is so that is a robot arm charging. So that is automatic charging by robots.
Yes.
And that is interesting to me. We have a lot of bright engineers from the big companies. They stay there 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and they know how it works. And they are all so bright, they are all going in new business. Okay, in my old company, I had a fancy idea on a robot scan mechanisms, but my boss said, okay, sell chargers in volumes, make business. So it's
Yeah.
okay for a while, but I go to the next level. I start my own business, and so we have a lot of those for these interconnection systems, and that goes together. You have the plug and charge. That is, you don't need the driver as operator. You're driving to some place. The robot is coming in, putting the CCS connector in, and the customer comes back and the thing is paid. It's done. The robot is away. The flap is closed, and you can easily drive away. And that will come to the market once on customer feature. The second is imagine you have a charging site and you have queuing. And
Queuing.
today you see that
Yes.
in Tesla parks, you have to
Uh-huh.
wait if the
Yeah.
till the car is driving. Or imagine you have these driving supportive systems, and you just go 10 meters further with your car, and the car is automatic charging, and you can drive into the queue,
Yeah.
leave your car, get your coffee, coming back, and your car is 10 meters at the charger, and it's automatically charged. So that is, and that is all coming from the customer experience and expectations, and we can deliver that because we have professors from MITs, and so we have all the capabilities of bright guys. That is picture pattern recognition, that is robot arm construction, that is going to make it cheap, and that is a crazy opportunity for CharIN. So we can create everything because that is the only known organization to me who has that access and database to the intelligence of the world. And we have 3,000 engineer contacts currently within in CharIN. And I'm not sure where CharIN is going. Currently, we are on connector. We are doing a bit on data. So we are going to cooling, to automate it. But if we would say, let's create a new product, so okay, go to my database, who is interested in participating, and And as a CharIN and CCS is a success story. So if you ask anybody, why did you get into CharIN and what do you think about CCS? So you will not hear too many complaints about it. Okay, that works. They are organized, so they have a nice looking chairman so you can discuss with, and he is willing to speak to Chinese as well as to Indonesians and Philippines. It's so that
Yeah.
that is this kind of society, and that is a big asset, to have society and access to technology. And I have a lot of ideas, so I'm just thinking about to found a university to give access to everybody in the world to that knowledge base, and so can deal with. And as long as the world stays stable, and so we are willing to communicate with each others and not to fighting against. So that is a gigantic pool of knowledge we have, and so I see that aspect of technology information transfer to some countries. And I traveled a lot to Asia, and I, you hear me, I'm totally fascinated about all the aspects around CCS. If you're going, so the current situation, the cars are shipped from China, Korea, Japan, Germany, France. So they are America. So they are shipping cars around the world and so supplying, and all these emerging countries. So they force them to build factories and whatever. And so the traditional industry is set. And in the EV technology, the rules are a bit changing, and the complete charging infrastructure that is in principle easy technology, that is concrete, that is copper, that is power electronics, that is wires, that is a building process, machinery. And so all what you put into that infrastructure could be done locally. And that means the money stays in your country, you're setting up infrastructure, you employ your people, you pay your people, and you create value around the mobility. So the
Yeah.
cars are a bit easier, and so that is, from my perspective, a big opportunity for emerging countries to get a piece of the cake of technology around that. And
Electric cars. Yeah.
that is again the story of CharIN. So we have corporations with the local EV associations in the Philippines, in Thailand, in Indonesia, in Singapore. And so I met all that guys. They all took me into their families and said, okay, that is my favorite. Okay, before coming in closer contact, I need to know who you are. And that is not this straight business. Do you want to join CharIN and here write the content? It's more so. Are we willing to exchange? And so, okay, if you know your family, so you are good. And I
Different
have
cultural standards, right? And
yeah,
practices.
that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
good, and that is interesting. So as I did that, that is the area they are called ASEAN 10. So that are the countries really performing: Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines. So they are 10 amongst
Okay.
themselves. And if you are looking to the business performance of that area, that is the strongest growing area of the world. And China is nice, and Europe is nice, and but they are making the game in the future. And that was kind of my alliance. So even if we have the Chinese with a lot of power, if all that 10 in ASEAN 10 would go together, and they would go together with CCS and the Europeans and the North Americans, so that is a strong position. And if they decide we are strong ASEAN 10 and we are going to CCS, there is no chance for the Chinese to bring their technology in, and that is quite close, because we have one of our managing directors is a native Indonesian, and she's located in Beijing, and she has her Indonesian network. And so we tried on every perspective, let's align in the free world of economy to make the right things done. And yeah, so that's
Wow.
a lot
Yeah.
of
So
things. One is
you're
technology, one is passion.
yeah, you're making big moves there, world moves, right? It's not
Yeah, yeah,
just, and that's good for industry because then that means that the same vehicle could go all over the world and charge
yeah,
the same
yeah, yeah,
way, and so
yeah.
you'll be able to travel, go to a different place in the world. You'll be able to know the technology. Yeah, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
You seem to have way more than just a narrow view on just charging. This is just a charging. You're doing a bunch of things way more than I was expecting. I thought you were just going to be like, "Oh, this is our
Yeah,
technology. This is what we do." But you
yeah,
seem to
yeah.
be,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
looking at a
the
bigger
biggest
picture.
point is so we are just what is the focus currently, and so we create position papers, implementation guides, recommendations, and so we have a definition that is called the customer journey. And so we take the customer and walk them through the process of charging, going back to the car. And that
Hmm.
is interesting because it has been agreed among all stakeholders. So I'm the expert in connectors. So what is the customer expecting from the connector? Next is, oh, I'm a back-end programmer. So what happens if the customer puts the connector in? And so that is a worldwide aligned proposal. So what is the customer journey and who has to do what in which step of that? And that is really, so that is the stage now to take the customer more into the boat because that is now becoming a value. So in the last years, he was happy to get a charger. So it's okay, I'm one of the exotic passionates who's driving what, but if the EVs are really replacing the gasolines and diesels, so the expectation is totally different. And if you don't fulfill the customer need, they will never charge at yours. Today they are happy. In 2 years, okay, I never go to the network, and that is if that would happen, that is completely stranded invest because there are some companies they investing heavily in chargers. But
Hmm.
if the customer says, okay, there is a second network with better performance and price, they switch
Yes,
as they
we're
switch for
switching.
fuel stations, and that will be the challenge for the future. And it's again, there are some companies complaining about ISO 15118 still in Europe. Say, okay, I have a simple wall box and it cost me some money to put it in. And so I try to make it as regulation. So everybody who is doing a charger has to implement that ISO 15118. And so that
Yes.
is in principle not really necessary because you can charge your car with a simple
Yeah.
mechanism. And so I put that on the table to the regulator, say, okay, wouldn't it be a good idea to have a European regulation that every charger and every car is going to have that capabilities? So even if it take us 2, 3, 4 years, it would be good to have it now to bring business people together to figure out what idea is if we are connected. But they succeed, and because they complain, it's okay, no, Bracklo, it's too expensive. We don't need that, and so I was a bit pissed to be honest. But what happened? The good companies they implemented it and said, okay, I don't need a regulation because there's a customer feature behind. And what
Yes.
happens? The complainers, from my perspective, will be thrown out of the market because
Yeah, because
they
they're
are
not
good in
future proof.
complaining, they are good in lobbying, and so we try to avoid any regulation and said, okay,
Hmm.
Bracklo, you automotive guide, we are not willing that we are forced to have that. That could be on our all fortune for the future. So don't complain too much because it could to our all fortune if we all have the same technology. And now the market is speeding up, and there are still some complainers, and that is from my implementation group for that plug and charge. So I'm because CharIN is open, that is compliant, everybody can join. You can't restrict nothing to anybody. Say, okay, there is a group of A or B. So, okay, every group is open, everybody can participate. And I created that idea to have that European trust body for data. Ask who is willing to participate. And we had a lot of complainers. It's okay, there's my LOI. So you can write the LOI or you can complain. But if you complain, we start the project without you. And
Hmm.
so they say, okay, you can't do that. I can do that because that is free and open to everybody. Everybody who is willing to join can join. If you don't want to join, I respect your decision, but probably you lose a bit of information, and that will be the significant energy industry the European car industry is on, the car, the operators of the chargers are in, and the service contract as well, selling the charging contract to the customer they are in. And so
Yeah.
that is a group of different perspectives, and they are all, well, we are all trying to have that technology ready by next year, that every car can automatic charge at every charger in Europe. So that is our vision. And so if that happens, I'm wondering about those companies who have to
Yes.
argue if the
Yes.
customer goes to their device and
It
they
doesn't
have to
work.
argue, oh, unfortunately, so we we were not willing, but that is market, because it's freedom to everybody to
Yeah.
participate or do it. And so that could be wrong what we are doing, and the others are right. But if you have a couple of available capacities around, you will ever have the necessary mass to start. Okay, we don't need everybody, but we have 10 or 12 partners. We walk that through, and so that is lot to come on that. And the most for me is the energy, because that is the real change, so that the societies are going to go to be electrical. The electric vehicle is part of that, so we will have
Yeah.
tremendous increase of renewables,
It's
so
the
we can
biggest
buffer
battery that
with.
we will own.
Yeah, and that is, if you calculate the numbers to have these 50 kilowatt hours per cars multiplied by 10 millions, and there is that is called a European energy reserve. So they have some power plants, and if something goes wrong, they switch these big plants, and they cost hundreds of millions of euros per year just to have the opportunity to make the switch. If you just
Yeah.
count a couple of million cars, you say, okay, forget about these European
Yes.
energy reserves. So we have that built in our cars, and there's a
Yeah.
lot. I think that comes in for innovation. So what is trading, what is stabilizing, what is independency in local areas, in different places of the world, and can operate my own business with my own energy. But it takes probably 5 years if that comes really to the market. And currently we see that. We have one kind of what CharIN is doing. So we are facilitating conferences. That is, we have a format that is called Festival. We bring people together with cars, with chargers, with software. We put them in one place, and that is nice. You can see all the cars and chargers coming around, and we will having one event next year that is a V2G, so vehicle to grid conference. And so
Mm.
my intention is, so we bring 50 cars into that site. That is an old factory building. And so we will power the complete building, the complete conference by those cars. And
By those
it's a
cars.
vision. I don't know if I make it, but imagine to have that fleet of 50 cars driving to that site. And that
Yeah.
is going to be in Berlin with all the governmental. And that is a show itself to have 50 cars in a row. And
Yeah.
so then the idea is to switch us. Okay, that is possible because we need to switch the brain at the decision makers' perspective, because they did not catch it, the potential. Now they have, okay, we need to have secure energy, and we have other problems, and we have coal, and we have atom and gas plants, and so how should we react? So they are not as open as I expected to new technologies. And so as of the power of our members, so we have the opportunities just to have a look.
Yeah.
It's a cheap trick because it's not too much, but 50 cars, but with 50 kilowatt hours, it's enough to do everything you can.
Yeah,
Our
without
machines.
taking too much from a single car, right? And I think
Yeah,
that's where it gets confusing with V2G. Like Elon was saying that like customers can't manage, how much energy they want to give back, because they want to have the car charged all the time so you can go. But I think when it becomes a energy exchange, right, then these systems will be able to smartly, decide I'm gonna trade 5% of the energy of my battery because that's how much I can spare, right? And you
yeah,
can set all that beforehand. And if you have a million cars doing that, then you have enough energy to run
yeah.
the
And
society essentially. Yeah.
I'm positive that this technology is coming via fleet operators, because they have the opportunity to make what they want with their fleet. They can order the cars they want. They can equip with the technology they want. They have parking
Hmm.
arenas in their ownership, and I think they will make the game
Hmm.
first. And so we'll have a good announcement next year. So because we have some nice, interesting big players of that arena coming into CharIN, and that shows you who is
Oh,
going to join CharIN. You know
there you go.
where the industry is going. Um, if you would follow the CCS homepage and see who is going to step in, you
Yeah.
know where the industry is going, because they are not going in without having any intention on that.
Yeah.
And so we have now that with the flying objects. And so the next step
Okay. Yeah.
is yeah, because that is coming. That is easy design. So you don't have all these um, redundancy systems with engines and motors, and so that is much easier in electromobility, and that will come. But they all need to be charged, so
They all need
they
to be
are
charged.
coming in, and the next will be the ship and ferries because they need the 4 megawatts for recharging. They are coming in,
Yes.
and so we have meanwhile investment companies stepping in. We have insurances. We have fleets, and so that shows us. And they make use of technology. No? They are not developing technologies. Okay, that is for me it's a commodity to put in. Those guys know how it works. I have a lot of business contacts because in our meetings you have all the people you need for making your product ready. You have enough competition to ask different people around, and that is an easy access point. And interesting is due to Corona crisis and all the weak business. So we have still a strong increase in membership base at CharIN, and
Wow.
that is not for nothing to have that. So we have a couple, 10 left, but 30 came in. So that is a net
Wow.
growth of 20 last years, and so we have so many applications for next year. So I assume it's further growing, and the challenge is to grow with your organization. So as when I told I need to know your family before stepping in, it's probably difficult if you have more than 1,000 family members. So have
Yes.
to distribute your energy.
Yeah. Well, you guys are doing good work. And it's very fascinating what you guys are doing. I think, yeah, you guys are going to play a key role in advancing these electrification of mobility and, the use of energy in our homes and stuff. Yeah, it's great. I think you guys are going to play a key role. And so I think it's pretty exciting for you guys, and it's pretty exciting as for me as a customer to hear that this is much more than just a standard or a connector. You guys have a, a, a vision for the future and how to implement, and you guys are future proof. So now, because see, to tell you the truth, I was like, what are we gonna do? I'm getting a new car. It has this new connector. Are there stations everywhere? It charges fast. And now that I get to talk to you, I get to see that. Oh yeah, you guys are going places. It's probably a good investment to have that. In fact, maybe even future Teslas in the United States will find it really hard to not um, transition over to the CCS system, right? Because you guys such have a steep growth in the markets that I think maybe Elon's gonna be like, yes, let's just switch over because it's just much easier. As good as the Tesla's supercharger infrastructure or network is, I don't think. Well, I don't think he's gonna be able to compete, right? The whole being a closed system and not being interchangeable. That's
That is an
not
interesting point at
great.
CharIN. So Tesla joined 3 years ago. They were one of the early members. And so everyone is conscious. So shall we let them in? They have a different connection. Okay, let everybody in because we can discuss about what is good and what is not good, and shall we
Yeah.
take over that and what is better. And it takes some time. And they are really contributing part of the CharIN society, and they were one of the drivers for the Megawatt charging system because they have their idea on truck transport, they have their customers, and for that project, they identified it's better to align with the other industries because it's heavily expensive to do it on your own, and that is so that we align. So they have good, bright engineers, to be honest. They put that onto the table of CharIN. We enrich that with the traditional ones, and the product is really getting great. And so those Tesla colleagues recognize so that there's an extra value to be part of that family, which sounds a bit strange because they are in principle independent and faster than the others. But that is the flexibility of time to find alliances in different areas. You must not share everything, just step in, that is good. And just do it on reasonable reasons. And that is much better than to be tied in the systems. And that is our ecosystem that has to survive and we want to compete. And so we have yeah, many of the Japanese are early members. So for Germany, the Honda colleagues, they have been the
Honda.
first in the European market with the Honda E, and they are much enhanced on V2G with CCS, and they are in competition with the other Japanese. And so that means CHAdeMO is not Japanese and CCS is German. CCS is global, and the car companies choose what is best for them in which market, and they are quite adaptive to those. Yeah, that is one information. The European market will be soon CCS only. So that is the Nissan, the inventor of electromobility. So they have the new product launch with the Aria that is coming with CCS, and they are thinking if they continue with CHAdeMO, but that is all company decisions, so we don't judge that. The Pro Ace from Toyota has been launched. The Mazda came to Europe with CCS, so that is almost done. We have, yeah, besides Mitsubishi and Nissan, we have all Japanese companies as members within CharIN, and that goes from connectors to OEMs. So that is also done, and that is the message. The industry is quite flexible. So, okay, if we can play in all that games, so we have customers, we have regional aspects, and they can choose out of that. And the problem is for the car manufacturers, it's a pity that we have different systems because it costs money, it's
Yeah.
testing, it's failure,
Yeah, and for the customer too, because you're like, oh, is this our charging station? Oh, it's the wrong plug.
yeah.
That's super
But that
frustrating.
does not happen for the customer. The customer is in North America, he has one plug, he is in Europe, he has one plug, and the Chinese has a different one. That is probably not that big issue if you don't have that mix up of technologies. And
Yeah.
currently it looks like that we have the regional distribution. It's okay. It's
Hmm.
okay if Chinese have an own system.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but it costs money to the OEM, which is not
Yeah. To have to
necessary to be
change it.
spent.
Hmm.
But that is my message to the colleagues in Japan and in China. Uh, let's agree on functionality, because it's a pity if you want to sell a Porsche Taycan, having all that grid stuff and stock exchange and plug and charge, and they want to sell that to the Chinese customers. Okay, no, unfortunately we stick on that CAN system, so that
Yes.
is a bit stupid, and so we help that they copy as much as possible. And they say, okay, if you would use the two CAN wires and put Ethernet on top of that, so what's the problem? So you can stick on your CAN, it's wonderful and it's stable, but and that's hopefully they open a bit. Um, but from history side, we had a lot of struggles 10 years ago on that, and so there's a lot of history in, and probably it's some, but that is solved by ages. So if we are all out of business and the new generation say, okay, what did they do? Let's agree on one. But that is in principle the global harmonization by the global markets. And if you have you seen that Xiaoji new design they proposed? You have these CHAdeMO is DC specific and AC specific. GBT is a different shape, AC and DC. And they put, as we have at the combo, we have the two dots for the high power and we have the communication on top for AC. And
Hmm.
if you see the new Xiaoji design, it looks yeah,
Same.
almost the same, but it's different
Okay.
because
Yeah.
they need additional wires for the CAN communication, and
Yeah.
they put two systems in parallel that has to be 2 times power, 2 times communication, 2 times wiring. So it's more costly, but the shape is even in
Similar.
the same, because we have the intention as car manufacturer put it in behind the same flap. So we're selling Volkswagen to China and to Europe and to US. It's always the same flap. And the inlet size from the Chinese one is the same size than the American. And so we
Mm.
try to make that it's easy for the manufacturer to supply different market with as less effort as possible. And honestly speaking, they can. So the challenge is the CCS, because that is the intelligence system. And if we have
Mm.
to implement a CAN system for China as well, that is not the big challenge. And if most of the specification is closed, that is just like left hand and right hand wheel driving. And so we survive that. That is also not easy to have two mechanical constructions for the wheel position. So, but we handled that, it's workable. And so I'm sure we can handle two of those connectors, but we should not have more than one in one market, and we should not have more than two or three in the different regions. And so that looks as it is. And the rest is competition.
Yeah. Well, I have no doubt that you guys are gonna play a key role in our charging futures here in the states, right? Because like I said, you guys are growing, and I'm getting my first car, as many others, by the way, getting our first cars that have CCS combo chargers in there, and so yeah, gonna play a big role.
Yeah, you have to keep a bit pace in North America because I'm watching for the world car sales, and so there is Europe is number one,
Mm-hmm.
China is number two,
Okay.
Germany is behind China, and Germany is far ahead of North America.
Mm.
And so that is so if you respect, and America is mainly Tesla in
Yeah.
the market,
In the
and
market.
so that is, I think it's necessary to have an equal market share in every region of the world.
Yeah.
And so America needs to speed up on that because that is business, that is experience, knowledge,
Yeah.
export volume. And so, as I
Well,
mentioned before,
GM, the American car makers are making a valiant effort, right? I think I
yeah,
think they're finally making a an honest attempt at
yeah, yeah,
electrifying some
yeah.
of the markets with the now they have a few cars now that are that are
Yeah,
compelling.
and
And
they are going to battery manufacturing and sell,
yeah.
and so that is, and they put billions of euros of dollars in, and that is good for the customer because that is competition, and we are
Yeah,
all
genuine
grateful to
competition.
Tesla that they challenge us, but at the end, it's a car with four wheels, and
Yeah.
customers have different expectations, and they want to have the variety from a very sophisticated EV and a pure design approach and long cars and station wagons, and that is coming up, that the customers really having the choice. And so going 2 3 years, it's okay, there is just one variant that is an i3, that is an i3, that is an i3. You can get it in red and black, but that is not a customer choice. So that has four seats in. If you want to have a fifth seat, you couldn't buy a BMW, and that is
Yeah.
going to the complete product portfolio, and you will get it, and you will get it with different power levels. Okay, I want to have more kilowatts or less kilowatts. I want to have a bigger battery, a smaller one, and there's a lot of things to do because we still did not really understand the customer and if that is really his expectation. So we give them now power, we give them big batteries for long distances, and so that
Yeah.
is, in principle, quite expensive, and I think the market will sort out the customers. Okay, I just in my surrounding, I don't pay the big battery, because if they are aware they have to pay 5,000 in addition for the bigger battery, probably they don't complain about having
Yeah.
that. But if they have the choice, it's easy. Currently, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's all
There's some
funded.
applications where you will need it, right? Like in this Rivian uh, case, it's a big truck, so you'll be able to tow stuff. So you won't be able to get away with the smaller battery. So a big battery will just shorten your range.
Yeah,
But if you have a CCS combo charger, boom, you're charging in 10
yeah.
minutes, right? And then you
Yeah,
can
and
get
that is
your
a perfect product for the use case. You're going to the countryside and you
yeah
can power your house because that is the amount. So having your household that, so you're speaking of 2 kilowatts for the oven, and there's 1 kilowatt for the complete light system, and you're bringing these tremendous amount. You can power with a 50 kilowatt battery, you can power a complete household for a week. And
yeah
the Rivian has a threefold capacity. You can power your weekend house, and you can warm your pool, and you can
yes
cut the wood day by day,
yeah
tree by tree, and
yeah. I think the battery's 100 kilowatt, and then 180 is the top one or
yeah,
something. It's a
yeah, yeah,
huge
yeah,
battery. Yeah.
but that is if the customer says, okay, that is fitting to my use case, it works, and in principle, the electromobility it's good and scalable, so you can scale and cut it down, and
Yeah.
that is the industry perspective they have. So that is motor A, that is motor B, that is motor C. They all fits in. That has the same interfaces, and they can collect this. And that comes as soon as the volume is available. So currently, if you have just 100 cars with battery A and 100 cars with battery B, it's too expensive. Just give them one battery. But if you have a million of that, a million of that, a million of that, so
Yeah.
and that comes. I don't know if you heard about the European regulation, which is currently under work. So that is really dramatic. And so we see no escape to having everything electrified in the
Oh, I
next
see.
couple of years. And that is so quickly changing. And they have all the figures and the movements around.
Yeah.
And so they put regulations on gasoline, on diesels. And so, okay, so that has to be in that range. And that is getting more and more expensive and less feasible to realize. And so the penalties are getting higher if you pollute anything out of that, and so that and
Wow.
all the signals are guided. I'm not quite sure if that is the best strategy for the world to have just one technology, but it looks like that the momentum is still increasing, and due to the Corona crisis, so we have tremendous budgets of hundreds of billions of euros putting into new technology, green technology,
Mm.
infrastructure, and that fits all together to the EV. So that is, in
Yeah.
principle, money is available, strategy is clear, and so there is some variation around, but we will see still
Yeah,
stronger growth.
we
So
definitely will need it here in California because
mm,
our air quality is so bad.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so
the
we,
volume. So I tracked the
yeah.
volume for the last month. So we have 18% of all registrations in Germany are electrical. There is already, it's
Wow.
18%, call it
18%.
20%. And the volume increase is still going up. Probably will have 25 next year, and that is a quarter. And so
Yeah.
that is a significant volume because the volume behind is Germany 3 million, having 20% of 3 million, 600,000. And so we currently have 12,000 EVs per week in
Wow.
Germany. So we heavily export those cars. So we are not turning. So we had the discussion, is the time of the automobile industry over? No, we are a bit more successful in electromobility, in export than in traditional. And that is good if the market is stepping in, and we will have competition and we can make business out of that. And so we have in the different markets, we follow what is our percentage in Norway with German cars, looking to gasoline, it's that, diesel is that. And so we are in almost all countries as German market leaders. So we are in those markets competitive. Interesting point. So Tesla is good, but not in Germany. So I don't know why, but that is a specific market. So we list and who is successful or not. And Tesla is okay in the market, but there is no significant behind. So the French are in. They have the Renault Zoe. That is a very small car that is quite attractive. That is a hero in Europe. The
Hmm.
Volkswagen is performing quite well. And so if you go to the top 10, so that is always 7 Germans under the top tens in every country, and so that looks promising, and
Hmm.
that is a goal. If it is fun to manufacture, is it fun to the customer? If you earn money with that, that is coming.
Yeah.
Um, and just in the intermediate stage, we have a bit necessity to fund, and that is a real driver. So if you give 10,000 bucks for buying an EV, so that makes it attractive. It's not a bad car
Yeah.
that is sustainable, that is long living with these 10,000 funding. So that is in a range of a gasoline. So maintenance is cheaper, and in future you can harvest your battery. So it's a good technology as
Yeah.
long as it is
I
good.
think it is. It's going to be pretty exciting, and I think we're all going to be driving electrics.
Yeah,
And those of us who are, we're already enjoying some of those benefits of having a big
yeah.
battery in our garage and underneath our vehicles, right? And so, yeah, I want to thank you for coming and talking to me. It's very, very interesting. And you guys are going places, and I'm glad to have your technology in one of my next electric vehicle, as so many other customers, I'm sure, right? And I'm glad that you guys are looking way into the future so that it's gonna be a technology that's gonna grow and expand, and it's not gonna get stuck in history, right? Because that's not a good thing when we're investing huge amounts of money into a thing like a car, we want to know that it's future proof, that it's going to be good, that I'm going to be able to charge, and that the technology is going to keep evolving. So it seems like you guys are on your way, and it makes me feel so much better now that that I'm gonna get this new car that has that in
Yeah,
there. So
and thanks to you and for your activities, for your blog, and so that is quite important. And I was happy to join that conversation because we have to bridge the people around and the society, the technology, the governments, and so you are the perfect fit to leverage all that different things. And it's as I mentioned, not just technology, it's for daily life and for customer sake. And so you're really helping all of us to make a success out of that. And if there is success, we can employ people, they can earn money, they
yeah,
can buy a PC to watch your blog. And so there
there
is
you
a
go.
perfect ecosystem. So
Yes.
thanks a lot, and many greetings to the society hearing that blog. And so yeah, we are happy to stay in contact, and probably can have a follow up in two
Yeah.
years. Okay, what
Yeah, when
happened?
I get my Rivian
Of,
and I'm driving it around, then I'll be like, "Hey, your charger is
yeah.
great," or "You need to do this for your charger." I don't know. We will see,
Okay.
but definitely, yeah, the doors are open for you guys to come back and talk more charging because it's fascinating. I We didn't have a chance to talk uh, on that car that you designed, the BMW
I3.
i3, which I got to drive a little bit, and we can talk a little bit more about why you
Yeah.
think it didn't go into the market. Because I thought it was a great car.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just I don't know. It was too new. I don't know. The specs I think were a little bit weird
Yeah.
here for the American market. I don't know for the
But it's
European
still,
market
so
stuff.
I love my car, and that is almost 10 years old. And a 10
Yeah,
years old car is in principle not a good car today. And that
yeah.
is still competitive. That is not
Is that what you
on
drive?
what?
Do you drive an i3?
Yeah. That
Oh,
is an
you drive that.
i3S, and that i3S has a specific performance software that is
Ah,
giving more power in the range from 40 to 50 kilometers, and that is
there you
perfect.
go.
And there is no competition if you are staying at the light. You're having my i3 and a Porsche and a
Yes.
Ferrari.
Really?
So you win because that is quite lightweight, and so you
Yes.
can just that is optimize the performance in that speeding up. And
Oh,
so
wow.
typically you have two lights in the distance of 500 meters. So they catch up after 150 meters. So they come, but they have to break down the complete energy for the next light. And I just take my foot from the pedal that is braking automatically. It's in the standby mode. And if the light switches to green, I
You
just
go
take
again.
the energy, putting in, and they are losing again, and that makes
Wow.
them crazy. And that is good. As I told you, to create a product which is 10 years later, in principle, suitable for the market, and that is still, if you go to energy consumption and I love the idea behind to have a sustainable product. So that is with recycled material and new technologies,
Yes.
and that
That
is
was
much
pretty
more than
amazing.
just an electric car. And that was my disappointment because that is has been designed for being a sustainable car. And
Yeah.
honestly speaking, the Tesla is a good car, but that is traditional construction, and or this
Yeah.
Model S at those times, that was nothing really innovative. No? That was the traditional supplies. So the only innovation was on electric drive. But at the end, that car have never been CO2 neutral because the energy to put in was much higher than you can gain out. But that was a successful product, and that says the customer is saying us what is good and not, and you can't tell them. Like the Chinese can't
Yeah.
tell the customer so what is good for EVs. We can't tell the customer, so the sustainability is the only goal. So they have to expect, and that is good with your society. And if they are moving to sustainability, so that we can have that exchange, and how can we all contribute to a greener society?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot again.
Yeah, no, thank
Greetings,
you. Thank you for
Berlin.
joining me. And yeah, the doors are open. We can keep
Yeah,
talking about the i3 and charging and stuff and
yeah.
all that good stuff. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Good night.
Okay.
Was a
Good night.
pleasure. Bye.
Bye.